Anybody else? Or any questions for me? Now we've exhausted that subject.
Well, Mr. Bond, before we exhaust it,
Yeah.
can I can one simply genuinely care about others and not necessarily have a historical or cultural experience?
Of course they can.
And still make an impact?
Of course they can. Now, it may be that in the other relationship that one of the others says, you can't do that because you're not like me. You don't look like me, you don't have my experiences, and therefore it's not possible for it to happen. I think it is possible. And I don't know all the circumstances. Just met this woman one time, very quickly here. But I would think she would want to ask this prisoner, give it a chance. See what happens. If it still doesn't work, okay. But I think it's possible, sure. I don't think you have to look alike to be alike, or even to like. So not all the questions at once, okay? Yes, sir.
As far as self-esteem of African Americans back during the civil rights, like as a whole, as a generation, how do you feel as though the self-esteem of African Americans?
You mean when I was in school?
As far as your generation, growing up in the civil rights generation, or fighting for civil rights and equality, as far as self-esteem of African Americans, what do you think?
I think somebody, if asked that question, who were 20 years older than I am, or even 20 years older than that, would say we had a fair amount of self-esteem. We thought a great deal of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why we thought we had a right to go anywhere we wanted to. We paid the money through our taxes. These were places that spent tax dollars. When I got arrested at the Atlanta City Hall, which is a public building, I pay taxes in Atlanta and Georgia. I helped pay for that building. I had a right to go there. No one could tell me I couldn't go there. I didn't have that right. And when a policeman asked me to move, I said, no, I'm not moving. And he arrested me and took me away. Time proved me to be right, not him. And I won the right to sit there. But I had a lot of self-esteem, and I think we generally had a lot of self-esteem because we thought to ourselves, things are not right. We think we can fix them. And we did our best to do it and had remarkable success. We surely did not succeed in everything. That's why we're waiting on you to take the next steps. But we did what we could, and I think we did okay.
What is your take or your opinion or stand on the images portrayed on TV and music videos of the African American male and female?
It's not just on TV. It's other places.
In real life, too.
In real life. In this room. I don't think it was Morehouse's finest hour. I had to write this down. I don't think it was Morehouse's finest hour when you were slapping your ass in here. I don't think that was a major high point for the college I went to. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was a low point. A low, low point. And you can tell me it's just music, just a song, but it struck me like a low point. Does that answer your question? Yes?
Tell me more about your opinion of Morehouse today and what it was. I mean, you as an alumnus of our institution, what do you think about us today and the differences besides the eras?
First, I should tell you that a lot of what I know about Morehouse today is really secondhand. I don't come there often. I come to Atlanta quite a bit, but seldom do I go on the campus. I was there about a couple of years ago. Dr. Franklin very kindly had a painting a picture painted of me. It's held in that hall of pictures now. It was a proud moment for me, and I was happy to be there. But I really don't know much about the ins and outs of what's happening in Morehouse and how different it is, if it is, from when I was there so many years ago. I hear about things, and I'm curious about them. I wonder how such a thing could happen. I wonder why Morehouse has a dress code. When Spelman, as far as I know, doesn't have a dress code, does it?
They do.
We do.
Oh, good. I wonder why, what kind of self-esteem a school has to institute a dress code, possibly to elevate its self-esteem, and that bothers me. But I don't really know much about the campus right now. Yes?
I have a question about
that moment you said when a friend asked you to organize a sit-in.
Yeah.
What was that defining element, or what was that element in the air on campus that was going on that caused you to go from, you know, just being upset with your situation, discussing it on campus, to actually doing something about it?
I think I had several different emotions. I compared my situation with the situation of students at North Carolina A&T, whose picture was in the paper. These are students at A&T who were doing this. And I thought, we're at least as good, if not better, than students at A&T. If they're doing something that's admirable and I like, I can do it too. So that was one thought I had. I thought, how can we do this? How can we go about doing this? Well, luckily, the newspaper story I was reading was like a primer, how to sit in. It showed these young men, all of them I think dressed in suits, coats and ties, sitting at the lunch counter in a very sober way. They weren't, you know, doing like this. They were sitting there, they had their books on the table in front of them. They looked like students. And I thought, this is the way we ought to dress if we do this here in Atlanta. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I thought we should mirror what they had done. We could do it, so it was easy to adopt what they had done. I also wanted something to be done that wouldn't be just Morehouse. So I made sure that people from Spelman, Clark, Marsh Brown, ITC, Atlanta University, somebody from each of the campuses was involved. And so we spent several days making sure these people, these people, these people, these people, these people, all were involved. So it would be all of us, not just one or two of us. And probably other thoughts as well, but primarily I thought about the mechanics of the thing. How would we go about doing it? How would we make it a success? How would we organize ourselves? What would it look like? Where would we go? All those things. And over the next, say, week, we figured them all out, and it became easy in the end. I'll tell you something I find peculiar about it. In Nashville, where I used to go to Nashville quite a bit, I would tell my colleagues at Morehouse that if they would give me gas money, I would get them a date when they got to Fisk. And then when they got there, I'd say, if you can't get a date here, forget it. So I compared my situation with the Fisk situation. And I was trying to make a point here. What was it? Anyway, in Nashville, the students at Fisk and Tennessee State had extensive training in nonviolence, much more so than, as far as I know, almost any other college in the South. They studied, they learned, they read, they practiced, they had sit-in sort of tests. They rolled up a piece of newspaper and beat each other with it, you know, to see how this would really work out. What would you do if somebody was hitting you like that? They learned how to cover their body, fall down if somebody got them, to cover their vital organs. They had extensive training in how to do this, and we in Atlanta had none. I just remember somebody said, if somebody hits you, don't hit back, okay? Okay, that was it. And luckily, that's what we did. If somebody hit us, we didn't hit back. We didn't have any training. And how we were able to do this with this minimal training, and how the people in Nashville were able to do it with this extensive training, I really don't know. It's just a blessing, I think, that we managed to do it without this training, or we would have been in serious trouble. Yes.
Do you remember where you were in like your buildings when Martin Luther King died?
Well, as I say, he lived for a portion of his time when he lived in Atlanta 2 doors away from me. Yeah, there were 2 houses between my house and his house. And I knew him through having been his student. I knew him by having met him in various circumstances. I knew him because he was a familiar figure in Atlanta. If I went to the drugstore, I might see him. If I went to the bank, I might see him. If I went to the grocery store, I might see him. So he was somebody I would see all the time, and we were not close friends by any means. But we knew each other, and we would speak if we met. So when he was killed, I had the feeling that someone very close to me had been killed, even a family member, although we were not that close in reality. That somebody very important to me had been killed, and somebody important to me and the whole larger society had been killed. And I felt awful, tremendously bad. Like President Kennedy's assassination, when the first news came You didn't hear that he was killed, that he'd been shot, was what we heard, the news said. And seconds later, he'd been killed. So in that moment where he'd been shot, you hoped against hope, maybe in the shoulder, maybe something like that. But it turned out that he'd been actually killed, he was dead, you would never see him again. And so just a sad moment for me, I think, but for everybody. An awful sad moment. Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you were waiting on us. So ideally, what are some specific expectations that people from the movement have of our generation?
Oh, boy. I expect you to find your way to change the society you live in for the better. To look around you at where you live, I don't mean Atlanta particularly, but the United States generally. Look around the United States, or even the whole world, and say, there's something terribly wrong over here. And I think if we do A, B, and C, we can make a difference. I expect that of you. I don't expect you to come to me and say, tell us what to do. Tell us how to behave, how to march, how to do this, other. I expect you to, on your own and through your own ingenuity, your own intelligence, your own experience, to say, here's the problem, I'm going to take care of it, and I know that people who can help me. These people right here can help me. If I go to them and ask them to help, and they will help, because that's the kind of people they are. That's what I expect. Can I count on you?
You can count on
What about these others?
Sure, you can count on it.
Yes, sir.
Just like take it to like current events. What do you think is the importance of Rick Santorum's kind of like not surprising, but unlikely close to winning in the Iowa caucus?
It's frightening in a way, because this is a man who just the day before said he didn't want to help black people by giving them public money, and who has said things like that in the past. So if this is a man who comes high in the ranks in the contest to be the candidate for President of the United States,
Wow.
it's scary that many people in Iowa thought, this is our guy, he might be the next best president, I want him to be the next president. It's scary, it's frightening to me. But then I look at the whole field of candidates in the Republican primary, and they're collectively frightening. As a group, they're frightening. They are terrifying. Ron Paul has a long history of making bigoted, racist statements, a long, long history. What's surprising to me, I know this is not true in this room, is the large numbers of people, young people, attracted to him because he is so hostile to recreational drugs or drug laws. He's against the drug laws. That is, he wants them to be stronger. He just wants them not to exist. And that I think attracts him a lot of support from young people. He is the most fiercely anti-war of all the candidates, and that attracts some support from young people. But it's scary to me that this racist element in him is not a disqualification, because somebody who has these views, to me, is not qualified to be president. I don't care where else he agrees with me. This is a disqualifier. If you believe that, you can't be president for me. And I'm just frightened that so many of these people have made these racist statements, and the Iowa voters apparently say it's no big deal. We just don't care that much. Doesn't make any difference to us. We're not outraged. I don't know if you see this phenomenon. I bet you've seen it play out in the newspapers. Some black person will say something anti-Semitic against Jews, or something about some awful statement about somebody, and immediately the black leaders are called upon to repudiate them. Repudiate him. He said something ugly. You're black, say something bad about him. Who's going to say something bad about Rick Santorum? Right. Who's going to hold him up to light and say this man is not qualified to serve in public office in the United States? It was a shame. He was a senator from Pennsylvania. He ought not be in public office anywhere now. Who's going to do that? I'm waiting for somebody to do that. Yes?
You know, in light of those comments, can you speak to your experience with the Eyes of the Prize project? Because that speaks to a lot of the history behind the civil rights movement.
Have you all seen Eyes on the Prize, the documentary? This is probably the best documentary on the civil rights movement, and I narrated it. It's great, not because I narrated it, because anyone could have done that. I didn't have anything to do with making the thing. It's just my voice you hear when you see it. And it is just wonderful. It is a wonderful depiction of the civil rights movement. It is, I think, the best documentary about the whole thing. And if you want to teach somebody about the movement and they're not great readers, send them to Eyes on the Prize and let them watch this. It's fabulous. This documentary was made by a remarkable man named Henry Hampton, who sadly has died. And he got his start, I don't remember what church, he worked for a church, a denomination, and made documentaries for the denomination, and had the idea of making this comprehensive documentary about the civil rights movement. And he began to raise the money, and he had house parties to raise the money, he had some foundations give him money, some people gave money, he had house parties to raise money, did all he could to raise the money, finally raised the money, put the thing together, and asked me to be the narrator. And he said to me, if you are the narrator, you can't appear in it, because it's disconcerting for the people to see the narrator. If Joe Blow is the narrator, and then you see Joe Blow in the documentary, it's disconcerting. So you can't be in it. I thought, shoot, this thing is going to be on public television. I could be on public TV. So I agreed to do it, and lucky for me, there are some shots in there of me refereeing that fight with Muhammad Ali and Maynard Jackson. You can see me as a referee, and then when Ali hits Maynard and Maynard knocks him out, I count him down with that, what was called the long count. 1, 2, and then raise Maynard's hand. So I do appear in the documentary for that little bit, for which I'm grateful. But then I went to Boston to narrate it, and I had never narrated a film before. I've since then narrated many of them, but I've never done them before. And I thought I would see this film of Martin Luther King marching up the hill, and I would say, Martin Luther King marched up the hill. Of course, it's not like that. You sit in a small room with earphones on, and you see some words come up before you on a screen, and you say, Martin Luther King marched up the hill. The person says, a little faster. Martin Luther King marched up the hill, too fast, and on and on. It took about 2 days to do the first 6 hours, and about a day and a half to do the second 6. And it's one of the things I'm most proud about that I've done in my life, and I'm happy to have it done. It is remarkable. It is so good. And again, I'm not saying that because I'm the narrator. It's just a wonderful piece of work. And if you haven't seen it, I'm surprised you haven't seen it, because at the 2 schools where I teach, at the University of Virginia and American University, when I ask this question, most of my students have seen it in high school.
Maybe as a follow-up question to take off of that point about most